How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the AmeriCorps channel. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. One of the things that we've been doing here on the channel is actually highlighting AmeriCorps members. But one thing that we actually do and take pride in doing is actually working with the community here in the Imperial Valley. And one of the things we actually want to do better is actually highlighting the people that we associate with and also work with throughout some of the events that AmeriCorps organizes with. And one of the recent organizations that we've been working with is IVROP. And one of the people that I'm really excited, my best friend for several years now, I've known him since freshman year of high school. His name is Erick Mungarro, and I have him here today, and it's a pleasure to interview Erick. How are you doing today? You want to go ahead and just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Good afternoon, good night, or good morning if you guys happen to be watching it at night. It's okay. Thank you guys so much for coming. And my name is Erick Mungarro. I work currently under the Rising Stars program at IVROP, where we serve the foster youth students in the Imperial County. So thank you so much for having me, Alex. I really appreciate it, and nevertheless appreciate it because I am also like a former AmeriCorps member.
Yeah, that's one of the thing. Awesome. Honestly, like I said, it's really awesome that we get to have you here. We've been kind of collaborating here and there with AmeriCorps, with you and your organization. So it's really nice to actually get to talk to you one on one and get to highlight you here on the AmeriCorps channel. But like you said, you're actually an AmeriCorps alumni, and that's part of the reason why I actually joined AmeriCorps is when you did your service. I actually helped you during your community service hours. And that put me onto the program and eventually led me to me being here today. But what I do want to ask you, like some of the things that maybe you remember, what led you to AmeriCorps itself? What was the reason that you said, you know what, I want to take this opportunity and just go ahead and do that?
So prior to working at AmeriCorps, I had graduated from Southwest High School, and the first year in community college at IVC, I wasn't really too employed at a certain place. I was just taking jobs here and there to whoever needed it. The prior one was actually helping an electrician out, and obviously working in the heat, it's like very intense when you compare it to AmeriCorps. When you sometimes you do work at some events, but I remember very clearly that working as an electrician, you have to be on the rooftops and everything. So I kind of like was like, hey, maybe I should find some sort of job that is a little bit, more in an office setting. I was interested in kind of like branching out rather than doing like, more of like outside work, to which I was still open to, but I wanted to see like what other openings were. It wasn't until like I got notified, like, hey, like there's this program called AmeriCorps, while I had finished like my job as like kind of like a mentor electrician. And they let me know. I went to go ahead and apply, and I didn't think it too much. I was like, oh, it's going to be like a tutor for schools, but that wasn't clearly my career choice. During IVC, my first year, my major had actually prior to psychology, which I have now, was criminal justice. And once I did my I actually, luckily I got employed by AmeriCorps. I started to basically kind of like, by fortune finding what my passion ended up being, which is education. To this day, from AmeriCorps all the way to now as a development specialist at IVRP, it has to pertain with education. It has to pertain with just working for schools, or especially for students and so forth. So it was kind of like a a hit and miss thing. Where like, oh, I saw that opportunity, I took it, and luckily it ended up being my passion. To which it ended up also making me change the major, which it's a little bit more in tie with, I mean, not really. Psychology is more of a sort of a major that people think that, oh, it's mostly for social working. It has to do with more being a counselor. But I'd say that psychology really does kind of help you empathize it and understand the students, as well as the staff, honestly.
Hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. I think that really also did really help me made my decision to join AmeriCorps is some of the career paths that I actually do kind of want to take, and also the career the education where I wanted to lead me. But that's honestly really awesome. And like I said, part of the reason why I joined AmeriCorps is because of your suggestion to do so. It honestly really does open up a lot of doors for people who are trying to get into the education field, or maybe want to get a sort of like a sense of what it is that they want to do down their career path. Maybe they are still indecisive of what they want to do, and this is honestly, I think it's an honestly like a really good first step. But I do want to ask you, since you are a former AmeriCorps member, what is something that that you took away? Because I know that you did 1 year. What is during that 1 year? What is something that you took away that when you finish your year, that you revisit? Sometimes you look back on and you're like, man, that was honestly really a good experience. And it's something that also helped you out throughout your career, and even to this day. Like, if there's something that you like still look back on.
I guess the biggest thing that I learned from, like, working my first year in education with AmeriCorps was having to understand the students, rather than only just teaching them. When you sit down with them and kind of level with them, and you hear them, their thoughts, their opinions, their way of learning as well, it kind of does help you out a lot. And that was mostly thanks to, with my side, it had to be Brawley Union High School. I worked with three teachers, and out of three teachers, you get different types of mindsets, different types of learning methods and teaching methods. So it kind of made me think, hey, I like this, I like that. You nitpick what's like very interesting towards those three different types of classes. Keep in mind that they were freshmen at the time, so they're fresh out of like eighth grade, coming to high school. It's very different from them, and sometimes even scary. They might express themselves in a way that might feel too different. They're like, oh, like I don't know how to fit in and everything. So it kind of helped them a lot. And I could tell since that year when I worked, getting to like interact with them and making them feel more comfortable with being in high school really did make me feel like, hey, you know what, that's something that I want to pursue. That's something that's a really key thing to do with those students. High school and adolescence is a very troubling time, for lack of a better word, for students. Some of them, might be dealing with things outside of school that are affecting them when they attend school. And sometimes at that point, when those outside factors affect them, they might not want to show up to school. So I always wanted to kind of help them want to show up by my presence being a more positive presence in their classroom setting. And it showed. It was really fun getting to basically see what they brought on the table to like learn, and also like their ideas.
So one of the things that you said that is actually I could really relate to is that whenever I actually started doing my own tutoring sessions with my students, I was actually trying to model my tutoring ways by looking at what my teacher was doing. And while it worked for a bit, I slowly but surely I kind of found my own voice and just what worked for me and what worked for my students. And like you said, one of the things that I actually take I take pride in doing is I like to make sure that I connect with my students. Yes, it's important to just actually make sure that their education is top priority, but one of the ways that to actually connect with them is to make sure that they're doing okay, asking them, hey, how's it going, how's your day going, how do you feel today, and just making sure that their well-being is actually doing good, so that way when they step into the classroom, they're focused and they're ready to learn. And that's another thing that I do want to mention or ask you is what throughout your AmeriCorps experience and working at Brawley Union High School, what was one of the highlights for you? What is one moment that you're like, oh my God, that was really awesome. I can't believe the student was able to achieve this. What is one moment that you look back on and you really like, you take with pride that you were able to accomplish something, or just something that your student accomplished that you like really take pride on being part of that?
Not so much like a highlight for me, but I mean, it kind of feels more or less of like what input they put, because a lot of it has to do with like, there you are some sort of part in them learning, but it also takes themselves as an effort. I guess the best way to interpret it is that when I started to basically go into classrooms and interacting with them, the best way for them to have learned was because I was open to, be there for them positively, and not just kind of be there, hey, this is what you got to learn. One good example, I guess I could say, was that when was one of my classes, it had to be bilingual. It was English learning, so most of them did not speak English. They were, either native just Spanish speakers, or sometimes here and there another different language. For the most part, that class was filled with mostly just fluent Spanish speakers. By the end of the year, call it also exposure to just like a culture right off the bat, but it was also them feeling comfortable with getting to learn it. With us, we would like go to the libraries, learn the words of the week, and so forth, and also learning them how to use certain tools for them to actually learn it and speak it and write it. And it takes time. It obviously does, but by the end of the year, they were able to pick up on words easier, being able to actually use them in their projects, use them in their essays, use them as an everyday life, like occurrence. So it was good to see that. Another great example was also with students that may necessarily just be English. They didn't have to be English learners. They are, for the most part, most of the students are intimidated by English writing, writing
Mm-hmm.
essays. That was like a big thing for them. And getting to them kind of in a way to interact online and, hey, find some clues if you're kind of stuck in like what you want to write about. Find transitions, find the summaries for the books, and so that way you can understand the book a little bit better. And by the end of the year, they were problem solving it, by themselves. But seeking my guidance minimally as the year went on. So it was this sense of what I felt very accomplished was that sense of independence from their behalf. For me, it was good to see that they weren't relying 100%. Mr. Erick's gonna be there, but they were like, oh, I think I'm gonna do like use the tools that Mr. Erick had showed me the first semester, second semester. It felt like a breeze to them a little bit better because being a freshman, not knowing how to write something as an essay, it's normal. It's completely normal to get stuck in those dilemmas of being in the classroom setting. But they were able to kind of use those tools that I provided for them, and for them to slowly end up continuously using them throughout their life. So I was very proud of them, and I still am to this day.
That's awesome. That's great to hear because one of the things that I do like to see is that and it's not so much about myself and my own accomplishments, but you do like to see that whatever it is you're trying to convey to your students or whoever they use in their day to day. Just like you mentioned, one of the biggest things or like things that I like to see or highlights for me is just whenever you work with the student repeatedly and then eventually they get it, they understand, it clicks with them, and then they don't really so much rely on you. They just kind of like when you check their work, they the techniques that you taught them, they're already implementing in them by on their own, without having you kind of like overlooking them or like kind of being their shadow. They just kind of pick up on it and then they just like start implementing that on their day to day. So that's on really honestly really awesome to hear that that's your highlight. And just kind of stepping out of the whole AmeriCorps thing, I know this is AmeriCorps channel. We like to talk about AmeriCorps. I did want to talk about your experience with everything. But moving outside of AmeriCorps, shortly thereafter, I know you served your year. It opened up a couple doors for you. What is it that you did once you stepped out of AmeriCorps? What was your mindset like? What did you kind of like? Did you know what you wanted to do? Did it take you a little bit of time to maybe figure out what it is, the path that you wanted to take? Or maybe did you just like already know what it is that you wanted to do right out of the gate from AmeriCorps?
So, like right after my first year at AmeriCorps, I started to just find jobs that were closely related to still being in the classroom setting. To this day, I still find it like my passion. I necessarily do not work at the classroom setting this year, being employed at IVRP. I work kind of like an outside factor, to help them, and I do, visit them at schools, but I don't work in the classroom setting. So like after that year, I kept working in education, and it never really changed or made me think twice after AmeriCorps. So that's something that I really want to thank AmeriCorps, that it made me actually find the passion for the career that I want to pursue. And I worked as an instructional assistant actually from, let's just say, for around 3 to 4 years going as an instructional assistant, specifically as a special education. The first year was subbing, and then I went to 3 and then 6 hours. So I actually, just ended up, staying for a certain school and worked, till I ended up becoming a 6 hour, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. It was a very, different experience, and another step towards, getting to interact with many different types of students, many types of populations and grade levels specifically, because, I came from Brawley Union High School, and then I went to elementary, and special education. So it's like a big difference. Their age group is far, different in terms of their demands and needs and way of learning. It's more physical, I should say, in elementary rather than, high school.
Right. Yeah. And honestly, that like I said, I know like we relate a lot, and part of the reason I do want to mention, like I keep saying, I relate to that is because I do want to thank, like I always thank you. I don't have to like keep on reiterating that, but I always thank you for like kind of like giving me advice and like counseling and stuff like that when it comes to that. And part of the reason why I was so open to even just right out of the gate want to work with special ed was because of the experiences that you've had yourself, Erick, and sort of the advice that you've conveyed onto me. And that was one of the reasons why I actually wanted to start working with special education. And it has been a journey, it has been a journey. And just being, like you said, it has been very physical at times, but it's honestly really rewarding. So moving along from that, you worked at with the school that you work at. You had different positions. You said 3 hour, then you eventually climbed up to 6 hours. After that, I know that you had a transition in jobs. What was your mentality like then? What was it that you said, you know what, I need a change of scenery? And you know, eventually we'll talk about your position now at IVROP and what you do there. But what was your mentality like there when you transitioned from, you know, working at the school setting and to, you know, going into IVROP?
Yes. So, working at a school setting was something that I always and will continue to love doing. The difference is that, for the most part, I just wanted to end up, expanding my horizons again with different, age groups and, different, students among like our population in the county. In a way, it just kind of like went off as like, hey, it's a different opportunity. Of course, who does not want to, take, far different journeys, different opportunities. I really enjoyed working at special education because it made me realize that, the compassion and the empathy should be there for any type of student, any different age grade or age group, because a lot of teachers might end up approaching students in a very similar fashion. And I think that it taught me that. It taught me, hey, you know what? There's students that might be needed to be taught in a different way, and that's completely normal, or needed to be taught in a way that's a little bit, more to their grade level, more to their demands, their needs. Once I had to transition, it was like a thing where I was open to, obviously being in the school setting, but this job required, the one that I currently am, requires mostly working with different types of students in different schools. So that's the reason why this job kind of changed it up a bit for me, which I was okay with. Because of the pandemic, I do clearly would be working at an office setting, like at a school, for example, having an office in Brawley, which is my population that I work with, and also Westmoreland, like pretty much northern Imperial Valley. But since the pandemic has been, I usually work remotely, but sometimes go to office, like to the office here and there, and deliver some incentives for our students. And this job kind of also, apart from answering more in depth about the question, was that it also made me realize that, hey, okay, there's students out there that need help outside of school, because when they come in, they're not focused on that. They might be focused in their issues at home. And that being said, it had to be specifically the foster youth, which is their background being from the foster care system. So we try to motivate them academically and in life.
One of the things that you did mention that I do like that you mentioned is that I think it's important that regardless of what grade level and what kind of student that you actually teach, that you have that experience. And I think it's important that you have that experience because, like you said, you worked at the high school level and then you transitioned to the elementary and, you know, working with special education students. And then moving into, you know, whatever endeavors that, you know, IVRP has for you, you have that experience where you know how to sort of approach students in a different way, and I think that's important. I think it's important because you don't want to have you know, as a teacher, you don't want to just like center yourself into a certain way. Maybe you have your own beliefs that maybe you stick by, but the students aren't sort of accustomed to that. So I think it's important to have an open mind and just, you know, try to approach students in a different manner, depending on who it is that you're working with. But yeah, thank you so much for answering that. And one thing that I do want to talk about is now that you're at IVROP, what are some of the things that you do that on your day to day? What does your day to day look like? Some of the programs that maybe you, you know, some of the workshops that you have for students. Just sort of describing what it is that you do from your day to day basis on at IVROP.
Yes. So the Rising Star program specifically works with students from K through 12, meaning kinder through 12th grade. And we basically, work with the population that I've already spoken, which is the foster care system. Many of these students, may have lacked that academic support and also kind of like moral support. Our services, they basically, like, a rundown is like, having them a support system, increasing their motivation in school and in life, of course, academic enrichment. So a lot of students might end up feeling that they don't necessarily are focused in school because of some outside factors that are affecting them, right? And the mentoring also has to do with, AmeriCorps has actually helped us with mentoring, because when we do the tutorings, apart from the workshops, we expose them to other people that may benefit them and make them think, hey, like they're going to college, they're tutors, like, it opens their mind, to career choices in a way. And with that, we go into, like, emotional learning. Emotional learning, in a way, is something that we've done a little bit. The last actual presentation I did, I kind of had that, where it was about, transitioning in schools and how to cope with it, right? So some students might be moved from school here and there during the, foster care process, And some of those students, in a way, will end up, feeling a little bit too, uncomfortable, having to make friends again, and kind of lashing out in a more negative manner. So we try to help them out into coping with it positively, speaking to someone they trust, venting out, going out and taking a run, those types of things. Career exploration has been fun as well. I loved it. I really do, because we end up getting a bunch of, career oriented people that, they could be sheriffs, which we've had, firefighters. We've had a chiropractor. It's like something that it was so fun, because we got to show them like her office via Zoom, of course, and like she was showing them, like, the spine, like, the replica of a spine. And that was like cool, because they're like, hey, like that's a job, like that's crazy, that's cool, right? So they
Yeah.
they really have enjoyed those. And the tutorings, of course, which is the last part. I did not necessarily touch on the support system. The support system, in a way, it's honestly us. We not only kind of provide an academic, positive environment, but we provide a very support and emotional system, which they feel welcome to be part of our workshops. They feel welcome, getting to participate, and it feels always positive. It never feels like, they're going to feel judged. They're going to feel like, kind of like, oh, like, it's like one of those classrooms where, like, I can't, speak out my mind. And that's something very important, that we get to also speak with fellow teachers, and let them know, hey, he did this, he did these accomplishments. And, we also provide who we are as a program. And that kind of helps them kind of understand, hey, there needs to be some sense of, understanding and empathy when they come in the classroom. So that way they don't feel, like they don't feel welcome in the classroom setting, because they might have it, very difficult outside of school, of course.
Yeah, I think programs such as that, such as the Rising Star program, are really important because, like you said, you don't really ever know what a student or a child or a kid is going through outside in the outside world. I think it's important to go into it, very open, not judging at all, because that child might already feel hostile. That child might already feel like, hey, like, if why am I going to go into this like with open arms? People outside forces might not be the best to me. It's important to like let them know, hey, we're here for you. These are some of the things that we could do to offer you and stuff like that. And I think it's really important, especially here in the valley. I always say that the valley is, very tight knit. A lot of people know each other. It's very hard to not really like come across like a familiar face in the valley. We're a very small valley, but I think it's really important to still have those resources where, if for those of that maybe don't have it exactly the best, they can go to those programs such as the Rising Star program and kind of get the help that they need and the guidance that they need to be successful in the future. And honestly, that's something that I did also kind of like look into when I was younger. That I know that IVROP also helps students get jobs, throughout their high school education. They set them up with helping them do resumes and whatnot, open up career opportunities for them, and just set them down the right path, which is honestly really important for not only high school students but just kids in general who might not exactly have the guidance that they want or need throughout their life. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, like that was very important. And I really, love that comment, because many, and to be fair, in the Imperial Valley, we have a lot of, taboo in speaking of such matters, foster youth, mental health,
Mm-hmm.
troubles outside of school. And in a way, I would bestly put it that it's a good thing to destigmatize those things, because a lot of it has to do with, like, the culture. It could be, yes, right, but the culture not in itself, because that's just one part of a culture that could be better. And it could end up, benefiting the population, and to be like, hey, we're out there to look for you, and to, be okay to speak out for your, any sort of problems that they might be having. And also help them in a positive manner, rather than just brush it off, or make it seem as though it's just for quote unquote attention. And that's not the case. And that's the biggest passion I've had, apart from teaching, obviously, but also getting to help them, being that, obviously no one's perfect, but being that person that's there for them, that they will feel, happy to be, like, there in general, honestly. And that's very important for the Imperial Valley. And I think it's looking that way. I'm happy to hear, the parents, they interact with us, they talk to us about the program, and therefore they're very, interested into what it is about, and they know what it's about. And we're more than happy to help them, because it really does show that by providing those incentives, providing, the that, very moral support system, you see those results in their school setting, and that's really wonderful. And you start seeing the motivation increase, the motivation increasing in terms of in general, getting to enjoy school, getting to enjoy life, and looking into careers. Funny thing, career exploration, we have a lot of younger students. We do have students that are in the high school setting, but the elementary level students, they're super interested with it. So that means that we're boosting that motivation. They're very like welcome for it. They're ready. They're ready.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's awesome because it does open the door for them like in the future, A lot of I feel like a lot of people you think they're a kid, they don't need to be learning about like stuff like taxes or anything like that. But I think it's like very important to just like briefly mention to them, hey, like this is what it's going to look like in the
It's
future.
like
So
exposure.
yeah,
It's
it's
like
good.
minor
It's
exposure.
yeah, exactly. I think it's a exposure, and it's really good to open up those windows so that they could get a good glimpse into that. But like you said, I think that the stigma around stuff like mental health, I think that's really important to address. And I know May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we talk about those things. But I think that moving forward, I think it's really important to one of the things that I really do like about the IVROP Rising Star program is that it addresses that. It's not, they don't shy away from that stuff. And yes, making sure that their education is in line, and that's top priority. But I think it's important to address those things first, and then so that the students could get set up for success in the future.
Mhm.
But thank you so much, Eric, for taking the time to do this interview, getting to know you a little bit better, highlight your AmeriCorps experience, and also what it is that led you to where you are right now with the IVRP program and everything that you do. I don't know if there's anything that you want to add to just cap it off and just send off the interview.
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank you so much, Alexis, for having me part of of the meeting. It's been a while that we were commenting about like getting to meet up and present to AmeriCorps, and I hope that everyone's watching this. If you enjoyed it so much, thank you so much for listening and staying for the ride. Check us out as well. Check out AmeriCorps Borderlands program at ICOE, and check out Rising Star program at IVRP. There's services there, and we're more than happy to help students out. We're more than happy, and thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here.
Hey, no problem. And honestly, like I said, like it's really awesome that the first community member that we get to highlight is you, my best friend. And to anybody that's interested, we wanted to make sure that you guys know any resources. You go ahead and check the description down below for anything regarding AmeriCorps and also IVRP for the Rising Stars program. Go ahead and follow us on Instagram, where we will be also highlighting just short clips, highlights from this interview, and maybe also provide additional resources. But I'm really excited to see where this goes. We will be trying our hardest to also highlight other community members from the Imperial Valley, get to know them and see what it is that they do for the community. But thank you again, Eric, for taking the time. I really do hope that you continue to have a great weekend, and we'll see you when we collaborate with the IVRP program. Thank you so much, Eric.
Thank you. Bye bye, guys.
Bye. Have a good one.